You just casually made a children's toy, yet it smashed right through America's $10 billion military satellite. It scared the Western nations so much they sounded their highest air defense alerts overnight, thinking World War VI was about to break out. But China calmly stepped forward to deny the rumors, saying it was just a children's toy, not a military weapon. But when you revealed your faster-than-light bombers, plasma railguns, and interstellar destroyers, every other country was trembling in fear. Meanwhile, the campus belle, Su Ruoshui, was taking a model rocket she bought from you to her grandfather's birthday celebration. When everyone saw the model rocket she was holding, they were instantly intrigued. These men were all his old comrades in arms, there to celebrate his birthday, and they were also the nation's top experts in their respective fields. One of them, an old man named Joe Amen, put on his glasses and said, "Ruoshui, my dear, is this model rocket a birthday gift for your grandfather? It looks exactly like a real one. I'm getting the strange feeling it's a miniature version of one of our own rockets. And the material, it doesn't feel like plastic or metal. It seems very similar to the coating on our Long March series." Joe Amen said, running his hand over the model's shell. And after hearing what Old Man Joe said, Old Man Su, who was sitting nearby, also began to inspect it closely. When it came to a rocket's outer coating material, he was as familiar as one could be. But the shell of this model in front of him seemed different from the coating used at their military factory. He asked with some curiosity, "My dear, where did you get this model?" "Just from a toy factory. If you don't like it, I'll take it outside." No, my dear. This model is incredible. It actually uses a design I've never seen before. Leave it here. I need to take a good look at it." "Oh, right, Grandpa. Here's the remote," he said, handing him the remote. Old Man Su looked baffled. "You mean this thing can actually fly?" Then, he instinctively pressed the red button. Rocket launch countdown. 9, 8. Listening to the countdown coming from the remote, everyone couldn't help but laugh. You spent $30,000 on what's basically just a speaker. It should at least have a light or something. Just as they were all laughing and about to walk away, a sudden blast of heat shot out from the base of the model rocket. Joe Amen, who was standing next to it, was thrown to the ground by the force of the heat wave. And what's more, a laser beam shot out from the top of the rocket, instantly burning a perfectly round hole in the ceiling. Along with a scream from the second floor, the model rocket shot through the hole with a whoosh. Disappearing from sight, everyone was completely stunned. Holy crap, it flew. Joe Amen scrambled up from the floor, completely dumbfounded, and just blurted out the curse. Su Ruoshui, standing to the side, was even more flabbergasted. A moment ago, she was furious, cursing you for selling her a piece of junk. But it turned out that this junk was actually a rocket that could fly. Everyone immediately rushed outside and looked up at the sky, only to see the model rocket separate into two parts in midair. One section detached and fell away, while the other section shot skyward at an even greater speed. Wait, what the hell did I just see? A model rocket with 3-stage separation? Even the other military officers were exclaiming in shock. Am I going blind? How the hell is this a model? This is a real rocket, okay. Seeing this, Old Man Su frantically called the Air Traffic Control Command Center. "This is Su Dingguo. Immediately notify all military air routes to avoid all flight paths within the vicinity of Tianhai City. There is an unidentified flying object. I repeat, an unidentified flying object is taking off, but in just a moment." The model plane vanished from everyone's sight. Instantly, all eyes turned to Su Ruoshui at the side. "Young lady, where did you buy this rocket model from?" At that moment, Su Ruoshui said with a tremble, I don't know either. I just bought the model from a toy factory. I really don't know anything else." Su Ruoshui shrugged helplessly, looking completely dumbfounded at this point. "I was just thinking of buying a rocket model, that's all. I never thought that in this toy store of yours, you'd actually be selling a real rocket." Old Man Su said with a grave expression. The laser on top of that model just now was able to instantly pierce through the roof. It's a lot like a laser weapon. It must have scanned for resistance ahead of it, and then cleared the way. It's very similar to the concept of an automatic interception weapon. As the director of the Dragon Guard Research Institute, Wang Heitao had studied advanced weaponry for many years. This kind of automatic interception laser weapon was something they wouldn't even dare to dream of. This is just unbelievable. Everyone craned their necks to look up, unable to believe this little thing could fly so high. I'd say, based on its flight time, it should be about to break through the atmosphere by now. At this altitude, Forget shooting down planes. It could probably even take down a satellite. Do toys these days come with space strike capabilities? If you just strapped a grenade to this thing, it could cause considerable damage. The old men craned their necks, sighing with amazement. Just then, Old Man Sue suddenly realized something. Wait a minute, I remember the rocket the Americans launched. I think it was heading in our direction. They're not going to collide, are they? Oh, that's right, we have our Dragon Country's satellites up there. If it shoots down one of our own satellites, that would be truly impossible to explain. The old men scrambled to pull out their phones and contact headquarters. At the same time, the Americans' global live broadcast was just beginning. Here in our great nation, this time our 8th generation Hero series rocket uses the most advanced launch technology, with a speed more than twice that of previous versions. Furthermore, it's equipped with a fully automatic weapons interception system to handle any interference during the rocket's ascent. In addition, the payload capacity of the 8th generation rocket has been increased to 50 tons. This time, we have also integrated our latest, newly developed self-sufficient recovery technology. This greatly reduces the cost of future launches. Moreover, our satellite this time will also demonstrate our newly developed Thor's Hammer project in space. To avoid causing unnecessary harm, this time we plan to have Thor's Hammer's tungsten rod aimed at a patch of open sea. Upon hearing this news, the group, led by Old Man Sue, all shot to their feet. What? The Thor's Hammer project has already been successfully developed? Wang Haitao was stunned. Thor's Hammer is a bundle of tungsten rods, the size of telephone poles, dropped from orbit. Its top speed can reach 10 times the speed of sound. At such a speed, the tungsten rod can penetrate hundreds of feet into the ground upon impact, destroying any potential hardened bunkers or secret underground facilities. More importantly, the destructive force generated when the tungsten rod hits its target will be comparable to the intensity of a ground-penetrating nuclear weapon. It only takes about 15 minutes from space to target. A hypersonic weapon like Thor's Hammer has a massive impact but causes no environmental pollution. It's a conceptual weapon that's even more advanced than nuclear weapons. Once the Americans master this technology, they will be virtually invincible. The coordinates they're targeting are not far from our Dragon Country. If the Americans successfully launch Thor's Hammer, it will inevitably trigger a massive tsunami. This will cause immeasurable damage to our Dragon Country's coastal regions, Elder Sue said in a grave tone. For the US to launch such a destructive weapon without even notifying our country, they clearly have no respect for our Dragon Country. This is absolutely intolerable. I'll contact the relevant departments immediately. As he spoke, he picked up the phone and made a call. Meanwhile, the TV screen was broadcasting a live feed from the US satellite. A tungsten rod has emerged from the launcher. We can now see. Our Thor's Hammer is now visible. Wait a minute, what is that? Just as the person on TV was explaining about Thor's Hammer, they suddenly noticed something underneath the US satellite. A small object was flying towards the satellite at an incredible speed. Warning, unidentified flying object approaching. A piercing alarm blared from the US satellite. Everyone watching the live broadcast froze. Who on earth would dare to provoke the United States at a time like this? Instantly, people in front of their TVs started chattering. Inside the Pentagon, mechas stared in utter shock. Report, object is unknown, suspected to be from a terrestrial source. Speed is approximately 100 times the speed of sound. Estimated impact with our satellite in 15 seconds. Hey, it must be someone who can't stand seeing us leave the world. So they want to cause trouble. But to cause trouble, you need to have power. Relay my orders. Thor's Hammer launch sequence will continue. Activate the interception weapon system immediately, Mechas said arrogantly. This is the perfect opportunity to use this live broadcast to show the whole world our strength. Countless infrared beams converged on a single point around the satellite. My God, they actually loaded an infrared missile system onto the satellite. At this rate, it will be extremely difficult to strike their satellites in the future. The moment Elder Sue saw those infrared beams, he collapsed back into his chair. This alone showed them how far they were from the US. There was still a significant technological gap. Infrared missile interception system activated. Target locked. Firing. After a flash of light, dozens of infrared missiles shot towards the unidentified flying object. In its direction, suddenly, a laser beam shot up from below. It swept past, instantly enveloping all the infrared missiles. And just like that, all the infrared missiles vanished. Everyone gasped in shock. Before anyone could even react, the US satellite suddenly went silent. The launcher, which had already gathered energy, also stopped working. It was only when the camera slowly panned that everyone realized the US satellite had been pierced clean through by that laser beam. The tungsten rod that was about to be launched was also sliced in two by the laser. In the US live broadcast, a small rocket flew right through the middle of it. The small characters on it, "Haha Toy Factory," slowly drifted past the camera. Not only that, but after the small object flew by, a spherical electromagnetic energy wave could be seen bursting from it. It instantly enveloped the entire US satellite. Then, just like an eraser, it wiped all the debris of the US satellite from space completely clean. The live broadcast signal from the US was also cut off at that moment. Elder Sue and the others were left speechless watching this scene. The US's Thor's hammer was stopped just like that. And that logo from earlier, it looks a bit familiar. Instantly, all the old men reacted at once. Just as everyone was about to go to that toys base to have a look, they suddenly spotted a small object with a parachute gently descending from the round hole in the ceiling. It was a part of that rocket from earlier. Everyone gathered around the small object, looking at it. It was, indeed, the booster from before. My gosh, this booster can actually be fully recovered. Not only that, it was able to return to its launch position with such precision. It even had reverse thrust as it was descending just now. That's unbelievable. A tiny little toy actually destroyed America's satellite that cost tens of billions. It also prevented a potential catastrophe for the Dragon Kingdom. Those people in America must be completely stunned by now. Young lady, did this rocket model of yours cost a lot of money? The old men looked at Su Ruoshui once more. It wasn't cheap. Su Ruoshui held up 3 fingers. Old Su's eyes widened in shock. 3 million? That's it? You have to understand, this is a rocket, complete with miniaturization technology. If we could really shrink a rocket to this size and keep the cost down to 3 million, wouldn't that mean we could launch space strikes against America's satellites at any time? Grandpa, it was actually 30,000, Su Ruoshui said, swallowing hard. What, 30,000? Are you kidding me? 30,000 isn't even enough to buy one of our missiles, and you bought a rocket that can go to space? And it's equipped with all sorts of advanced weaponry, Joe Amon said with a grave expression. Young lady, where is that toy factory? I have a strong suspicion that it might be a secret research and development base inside. And it already poses a threat to us. We must go take a look. Old Sue also nodded. Young lady, you come with me. I'm taking a team from the military department. If it's one of our own from the Dragon Kingdom, then that's truly a blessing for our nation. But if it's some other power, Old Master Sue trailed off without finishing. Meanwhile, inside the Pentagon, since America's satellite had been pierced, a full 10 minutes had passed. Everyone in the main hall was staring blankly at the main screen. The screen had now been dark for 10 minutes. The researchers were about to smash their keyboards, but there was still no response. At the sound of shattering glass, a coffee cup fell to the floor. What the heck? What was that thing that just flew by? The foreigner had already taken off his sunglasses, pointing a trembling finger at the main screen. I think there was a smiley face, and some characters from the Dragon Kingdom. Another foreigner stood up and said, while rewinding the recording, back to that previous scene. On the screen, a tiny rocket appeared before everyone's eyes. On the body of this little thing, there was a line of text. Could this be an attack from the Dragon Kingdom? My satellite, it's just, poof, gone, just like that, Makashi said, exasperated and furious. We will absolutely not allow anyone to bully us. Get me the Dragon Kingdom's military department on the line, now. They must give us an explanation. Makashi's heart was bleeding. This satellite was the culmination of their most advanced technology. A lot of its tech hadn't even been demonstrated yet, and now it's gone. Besides, the cost of this satellite alone was in the tens of billions. Such an expensive piece of equipment was actually destroyed by a tiny little toy. The scene changes to inside the toy workshop. Elder Sue is looking at you with a serious expression. You're Chen Xiao. Did you build that rocket model from before? After Elder Sue explained the entire situation to you, you finally understood that they weren't here to reprimand you. Instead, it was because after that rocket model launched, it had piqued their interest. Just what is going on with you? I told you to just buy a toy, but no, you had to go and build a real rocket. Building it would have been one thing, but you actually made it fly into space. It even shot down America's satellite. Now we're in big trouble, Su Ruoshui said to you helplessly. Upon hearing her, your face was filled with shock. Wait, what do you mean it shot down America's satellite? Oh, crap, don't tell me I have to pay for it? Pay for what? Space doesn't belong to them. It's their own fault for letting it drift over our side. Besides, we didn't shoot it down with a weapon. It was just a toy. If they built it so shoddily, who can they blame but themselves? Elder Su said nonchalantly from the side, if you are willing to sell this technology to our military, you won't have to worry about your personal safety at all. We will assign people to protect you in secret, and we will give you 200 million as payment. If you're not willing to do that, we can sign a strategic cooperation agreement with you. We'll borrow the technology and pay you a usage fee for it. Before coming here, Elder Su had already thought it all through. The technology inside this rocket model, whether it was the automatic weapon interception or the automatic retrieval technology, was something that not even America has mastered yet. If this technology could be shared and applied to Dragon countries' military and aerospace fields, it would be more than just leapfrogging the competition. It would be completely crushing them, and strength is what gives you the ultimate right to speak. As long as we have cutting-edge technology, we don't have to care what those Americans think at all. Hearing this, you agreed on the spot. The money didn't really matter. I'm a citizen of Dragon country, too. To be able to contribute to our country's development is the responsibility of every single citizen. Before Elder Su left, you registered his fingerprint into the remote control. Because the rocket model that had flown into space was still in space and had not yet been recovered. After returning to the base, Elder Su directly activated the fingerprint recognition and then placed the remote control on the ground. In the next second, the remote control unexpectedly projected a three-dimensional virtual image. Right in the very center was their rocket model. Everyone stared at this scene in complete shock. My goodness, this can't be a real-time holographic projection, can it? A researcher said in disbelief. It's possible. The entire projected world is centered on the rocket. But to achieve imaging on such a massive scale, you would need optical information scanning technology at the very least. But how could that kind of technology possibly exist in the real world? Just then, a researcher curiously waved his hand through the virtual image. But the screens of light were completely unaffected, as if it wasn't a light projection in the conventional sense. Elder Su, who was standing to the side, also touched it. But in the instant that he made contact, the entire projected world actually moved. To be more precise, it zoomed in. Seeing this, everyone stood there, completely stunned. But Elder Su seemed to have realized something. He continuously used his hands to manipulate the virtual image in front of him, and sure enough, he discovered that the entire virtual projected world could be zoomed in and out by him. Then, he casually tapped it again. The projection immediately showed standby for 45,678 days. Am I seeing things? Su Lao exclaimed. On the panel in front of everyone, there was an explanation for the standby time. This is the normal standby time in space. If functions are to be used, the standby time will be reduced accordingly. An old researcher next to them pushed up his thick glasses and said, "Good heavens. Doesn't that mean if this rocket model doesn't perform any extra operations, it can operate in space for over 100 years? An expert in charge of rocket energy questioned from the side. Are you kidding? What kind of material can sustain operation for that long? Even solar power wouldn't work. Look, there's an explanation on here. Hydrogen-powered engine, activated by fission at the atomic level. Then it stores the energy and outputs it in layers." Su Lao read it out loud softly as he spoke. What? Fission activation? That old researcher swore outright. He naturally knew what this meant. If you can perform fission activation and store energy at a microscopic level, forget 100 years. It could be powered for thousands of years. But how is that possible? You would need a particle collider just to start the research and development for this project. How could a tiny toy rocket like this possibly possess such technology? The old researcher's face was filled with doubt. Just then, a red exclamation point suddenly popped up on the projection screen. Warning, warning. A piercing alarm sounded. Interception weapon system automatically activated. At that moment, a researcher suddenly pointed at the holographic projection and said curiously, "Look, what are those black dots?" The crowd looked in the direction he was pointing. On the preset orbit, several intercepting objects appeared. Su Lao looked on in disbelief. "It's the SMARC II. We actually found it here." A young researcher asked, somewhat puzzled, "SMARC II? The one that makes electric cars. Didn't they say the satellite launch failed?" That's all an illusion. The things we're able to see are what the people in America want us to see. This Smart 1 rocket actually was successfully launched a long time ago. America's space industry is different from our dragon countries. Their private companies can launch satellites into space on their own. For us, that's impossible to monitor. Su Lao said with a grave expression. They specifically use space to monitor our dragon country's territory in real time. I just didn't expect that they had even succeeded with their second-generation satellite. It seems we need to re-evaluate this company. This is bad. It looks like it's about to crash, a researcher exclaimed. Everyone quickly looked ahead. On the screen at that moment, the rocket model was already approaching the Smart 2 satellite. But before a collision could occur, a curtain of light was emitted from the rocket model. It enveloped the Smart 2. By the time the curtain of light was gone, the satellite was gone with it. It was just like watching a science fiction movie, unfolding in real time right before our eyes. Where'd it go? It's just gone? You've got to be kidding me. This time, Su Lao completely lost his composure. They had been searching for so long for the Smart satellite and couldn't find it. It's said that Smart developed a new kind of cloaking technology, making it completely untraceable. But in the virtual image before them, not only was it found, it was even taken out silently. Even someone as worldly as Elder Su found it hard to believe at this moment. For a moment, no one in the entire room dared to speak. The scene just now was simply too shocking. Do you guys think it's possible this is an animation, projected using holographic technology? At that moment, a researcher spoke up from the side. Hearing this, everyone quickly snapped back to reality. How is that possible? Everything displayed in there, whether it's the real-time holographic projection or the hydrogen engine, is far too sci-fi. Modern technology can't achieve that at all. That person must be trying to win Elder Su's favor. That's why he deliberately showed this kind of animation. After all, this is all happening out in space. No one can say for sure. Let's leave it at that for now. We'll wait until after the press conference to talk about anything else. Although we've already signed an agreement with the toy factory, the payment won't be transferred that quickly. I need to think this through properly. Elder Su walked out, rubbing his head. At the same time, the Smart Aerospace R&D headquarters in America, Smart was jumping up and down, shouting, "Where are my second-generation satellites? Why did 3 satellites disappear at the same time without a trace? Can someone give me an explanation?" Smart was about to lose his mind. After all, they had only launched a total of 3 of these second-generation satellites, and they had even borrowed money from the US government to launch them. We're screwed now. It couldn't be that our own satellite made a mistake, could it? An employee next to him said to Smart, "Boss, I heard that one of our country's new generation satellites was destroyed by some kind of weapon from the Dragon country. It's very likely a new kind of black technology. Could it be that ours were also destroyed by the Dragon country's black tech?" "What? The Dragon country? Are you insulting my intelligence? Those people from the Dragon country are only interested in making a profit. They would never put resources into this kind of high-tech development. Get me the White House on the phone, now. I need to speak to the president." Smart rushed out of the room. Early the next morning, quite a few reporters from America had already arrived one after another. They were all there on orders, targeting the Dragon country's press conference. After all, America's event was broadcast live worldwide. They originally wanted to show off, but ended up becoming a global laughingstock. Those characters from the Dragon country had already been made public by the Americans. The press conference had just begun, when an American reporter stood up and demanded, "Excuse me, was the Dragon country's deliberate attack on our satellite yesterday an attempt to start a war?" This time, the press spokesperson was the Dragon country's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Hua Chuanying. After an emergency meeting yesterday, she had a complete understanding of the whole situation. So, she had long anticipated that the Americans would try to make things difficult. She just didn't expect them to launch their attack before the conference had even formally started. And this reporter's objective was simple: to set the tone for the entire matter right from the start. That way, no matter what the Dragon country's officials said later, it would just sound like a forced explanation. This reporter friend seems rather impatient. In our Dragon country, we have an old saying, "Haste makes waste." You all seem a bit too eager. But no matter, what is valued in a noble person is the ability to be inclusive. So, I will address your question first. Hua Chuanying smiled faintly and said to the reporter, "Since your esteemed country is certain that we destroyed your satellite, could you please inquire as to what method the Dragon country used?" And what weapon was used to launch this attack on you? Do you even need to ask? Everyone saw it. The reporter immediately took out a photograph. This photo of the satellite that was attacked has characters from your Dragon Kingdom on it. So isn't this an attack on our pretty country by people from your Dragon Kingdom? Hua Chuanying said coolly, are you referring to this? This item is indeed from our Dragon Kingdom. However, from what we understand, it's just a small toy. Another reporter from the pretty country stood up and said, a toy? Are you kidding? A toy from your country can go to space? And even punch a huge hole in our satellite? It could even destroy Thor's hammer. To be precise, toys from your pretty country can't do that. But toys from our Dragon Kingdom can. On the very day your country launched its satellite, a toy factory in our Dragon Kingdom just so happened to be launching a toy rocket. It's just that your pretty country's satellite appeared directly above it, getting in the way. Who could have known that your pretty country's satellite was so fragile? That's what led to this accident. Hua Chuanying said slowly, while the reporters from the pretty country stared, completely dumbfounded. Launching a toy rocket for fun? What the hell, do you think it's a skyrocket? And you say it's fragile? What kind of an international joke is that? That's a satellite. What kind of toy is that tough? Isn't this complete nonsense? Space belongs to our pretty country. Our satellite was up there. You broke it, so you have to give us an explanation. A reporter from the pretty country stood up stubbornly. First of all, about this rocket toy. That was entirely an independent act by a private company from the Dragon Kingdom, and it has nothing to do with our government. Some time ago, a satellite independently launched by a private enterprise from your country trespassed and conducted surveillance over our Dragon Kingdom. We did not interfere then. This time, we hope your country will adopt the same attitude. Secondly, space does not belong to your pretty country. It belongs to everyone on the Blue Star. We also hope that in the future, you will announce launch trajectories in advance before launching any rockets, to prevent a similar accident from happening again. And finally, our Dragon Kingdom expresses its deep sympathy and regret regarding this satellite collision in space incident. Thank you all. That's it, thank you. To hell with your sympathy and regret. What about our satellite? The group of reporters from the pretty country was dumbstruck. Excuse me, there's one last thing. Recently, these kinds of toys in our Dragon Kingdom, these rockets, they've become quite popular. We request that all flying objects in the space above our country leave the Dragon Kingdom's sovereign aerospace territory immediately to avoid any unnecessary losses. This is a notification, not a negotiation. After adding this final sentence, Hua Chuanying turned and walked straight out. Meanwhile, in an office in the pretty country, what? It's over just like that? That's the most pathetic lie I've ever heard. A man in a black suit next to Biden said, Mr. President. After the press conference, the Dragon Kingdom presented an identical toy. According to an assessment by our FBL department, it's a perfect match to the object seen in the video. I'm afraid the Dragon Kingdom might not be lying this time. We've also done some digging. This haha toy factory is a real place. Biden's eyes widened as he said, are you telling me the Dragon Kingdom just randomly launched a toy rocket and it shot down our pretty country's multi-billion-dollar satellite? The Secretary of Defense beside him spoke with a solemn expression, Mr. President. I'm afraid that's exactly what happened. Before this, space is an area of absolute dominance for the states, so during this time, the states has been vigorously developing space-based weapons. Nuclear weapons are something no one in the world would dare to use lightly. But this Thor's hammer they're preparing to launch is different. Compared to nukes, it's a completely different level of attack. It can annihilate a target from space with a single shot, completely eliminating the need for a long, drawn-out battle. But a grand project like this was actually destroyed by a toy from Dragon Country. This means that the current Dragon Country now has a very easy outer space strike capability. Your worries are well-founded. The thing Dragon Country launched up there can't just get to space. It also seems to be able to operate autonomously in space. Judging from the flight paths of those 3 smart eyes, they were all taken out just as they were about to enter Dragon Country's airspace, Biden said, shaking his head. Dragon Country's recent attitude has been abnormally tough. Judging from this incident, meanwhile, in Dragon Country, Su Ruoshui asked Elder Su doubtfully, Grandpa, didn't you say that many of this toy's functions were fake? So why are you letting Chen Xiao modify the aircraft? And even though that plane is decommissioned, it's not something just anyone can be allowed to work on. He's just a businessman, that's all. My dear girl, you're truly mistaken about that. I only just learned from you. that it took Chen Xiao just 5 days to make this rocket toy. Even if the other functions are just concepts, the technology for the rocket launch and autonomous recovery alone is already incredible enough. Let me put it this way for you. If the states knew about this technology in front of us, they would even pay billions to buy it. For him to give it to us so readily is a huge gain for us. From this, we can see his wholehearted patriotism. He is pure and sincere, not the kind of person you described. A merchant who only cares about profit, Elder Su said with emotion. And as for why this person sold it instead of giving it away, I think there are two meanings. First, it's to make us value this technology more. You never treasure what you don't pay for. Second, it's about this person's identity. For him, he could have kept it to himself, but he still gave it to us. And it was accidentally exposed during the state's global live broadcast. Yet he didn't blame us at all. He's either a fool, or he's a super master who doesn't think anything of these technologies. This time, having him modify the third-generation fighter is a way to see what Chen Xiao is truly capable of. Besides, we've also been wanting to take the toy rockets, laser weapon and equip it on our fighter jets. But our researchers have already studied it for several days and nights. And forget about equipping it, they haven't even figured out the basic principles of the laser weapon. This matter can only be handled by Chen Xiao, and the test flight for the 5th-generation fighter is about to happen. The officials have selected the waters around our Tianhai city for a simulated combat exercise this time. Little Sakura recently purchased a new generation of fighters from the States, Elder Su said to Su Ruoshui with a serious expression. They might come and stir up trouble. We need to be fully prepared this time. If they do come to make a mess, I'm actually hoping Chen Xiao can give us a few surprises. At this moment, inside the toy factory, you are gnawing on a roasted chicken with old Wang, the security guard. Although the money from Elder Su hasn't arrived yet, the money from Su Ruoshui came through. The quality of our meals can finally improve a bit. Just then, large truck slowly pulled up to the gate. On the truck's bed was a giant object. It was covered with a canvas. It seemed to be some kind of aircraft. You must be Chen Xiao, right? This is what Commander Su arranged to have sent over. A few military personnel got out of the truck. You stared at the thing behind the vehicle, your face filled with shock. Is this the thing you want me to modify? What a huge toy. Before this, you had only received a call from old Su, saying he wanted you to help modify something. He said the fee and everything was negotiable, but you didn't really take it seriously. After all, the 200 million hadn't arrived yet, so you couldn't really refuse. So you agreed. You originally thought it would be some small thing, but you never expected such a behemoth. After the canvas was pulled away, you were left speechless. Just then, a military officer walked over and said, "Hello, Chen Xiao. I'm Lu Ming, the one in charge of following up on this project. We'll be depending on you." You scratched your head and said to Lu Ming, "It's not really a bother. After all, you're paying me. The military can't expect me to work for free. So, what exactly needs to be modified?" Lu Ming then began to explain. This is one of our Dragon Kingdom's 3rd-generation jets. It was originally decommissioned. This time, the Eastern Theater Command doesn't have enough 4th-generation jets, so they figured they'd modify this one to make up the numbers. Actually, this 3rd-gen jet's engine and everything are still functional. You don't need to do any major overhauls. Mainly just give the exterior a polish and a new coat of paint. As long as it looks impressive, that's good enough. You nodded. Now that this thing has already been unloaded, it's not like I have a choice. Lu Ming continued, "In 1 week, there will be a military exercise in the East Sea. We need the 3rd-gen jet to make up the numbers. Chen Xiao, if it's convenient for you these next few days, I'll just stay here and see if there's anything I can do to help." So you don't trust me, huh? Fine, you can stay. But I don't have a place for you to sleep here. You'll have to make do. That's not a problem. Lu Ming nodded immediately. After everyone left, you finally began to size up the dilapidated 3rd-generation jet before you. Its mottled paint and battered fuselage all bore the marks of its past soaring through the skies. You took a deep breath. No matter what, you were a warrior of the blue sky who served the Dragon Kingdom with distinction. How can I just let you be scrapped like this? Since it's come to this, I'll bring you back to life. You gently touched the fuselage of the old 3rd-generation jet. You began to receive modification data, streamlined exoskeleton improvement plan, hydrogen hybrid power system, holographic lightwave radar scanning system, plasma cannon loading module. You looked at the improvement plans that appeared in the system. The corners of your mouth curled up slightly. Meanwhile, inside the Eastern Military Region Command Headquarters, a group of top brass sat around a table. The people in this room were at least senior colonels. Sitting at the head of the table was the Commander-in-Chief of the Dragon Kingdom's Air Force, Joe Amon. I've gathered everyone here today for an emergency meeting. I trust you all know the reason. Regarding our upcoming military exercise in the East Sea, the main star is our Air Force's newest 5th-generation jet, and the purpose of this exercise is to deter the petty thieves of Sakura country. Recently, in the waters near the Jiaoyu Islands, there have been frequent incursions by ships from Sakura country. However, our previous 4th-generation jets had a limited operational range. The vicinity of the Jiaoyu Islands was the limit of their flight range. Sakura country took advantage of this very point, which is why they dared to act so wantonly. But this time, our newest 5th-generation jet has double the range, and it's also capable of carrier takeoffs and landings. This demonstration will definitely shake Sakura country, Joe Amon said to the crowd. There's also another piece of news. I've heard that Sakura country, from the beautiful country, has recently purchased some new aircraft. We don't know the specifics yet. To be safe, we must be fully prepared for this military exercise. Comrades, the development of our dragon country's national defense is a long and arduous journey. We are different from other countries. We had a late start. Our technology was behind. Every step of research, development, and progress has been incredibly difficult. But we must have the conviction to win every battle. Although our production capacity is insufficient, this time, our 5th-generation fighter is the culmination of Dragon Country's technology. I believe our Dragon Country's technology will only continue to improve, Joe Amon said to the crowd, his tone grave. Hearing Joe Amon's words, everyone nodded in agreement. Might makes right. That saying is true no matter where you apply it. This military exercise is intended to showcase the battle between our 5th-generation and 4th-generation fighters. It's to demonstrate the capabilities of the 5th-gen fighter, and to shock Sakura country and its master, the beautiful country. There can be absolutely no mistakes. 3 days later, you've finished modifying the 3rd-generation fighter. Right now, a brand new plane sits in the workshop. A silver-gray fuselage with streamlined curves. Its appearance was brimming with a futuristic, high-tech feel. Lu Ming couldn't believe his eyes. This is a 3rd-gen fighter? Yep, just made a few small modifications. Oh, right, here's the instruction manual. As you spoke, you handed over a manual that was even thicker. Then a brick to Lu Ming. Lu Ming was completely dumbfounded. I'm so done for. This plane in front of me. You've clearly taken the 3rd-gen fighter apart and slapped a new shell on it. There's absolutely no way this thing can fly. Originally, our only expectation for this 3rd-gen fighter was that it could just fly. It was probably going to be the first one shot down by the 5th-gen anyway, but now you've done this. It's all for show and no go. How am I supposed to report back on this? Lu Ming felt like he was completely doomed. Just then, a truck horn blared from the main gate. A look of despair washed over Lu Ming's face. At this point, there was nothing he could do. He'd just have to bite the bullet and haul this thing back to base. Meanwhile, on a destroyer in the East China Sea, a group of high-ranking military officials stood on the deck. Each held a pair of binoculars, scanning the area. The reason this military exercise was being held at sea was to demonstrate two key features of the new 5th-generation fighter. The first is its super low-altitude flight capability. This allows it to attack enemy vessels in coastal waters, rendering standard ship-based anti-aircraft weapons useless. The second is its super short-distance carrier takeoff and landing. Demonstrating these two new features at sea is naturally the most direct way to show them off. This is considered the most cutting-edge technology in the field of aviation today, Joe Amon said over the intercom. All units, listen up. 4th-generation fighters, prepare for takeoff. On the destroyer's deck, two brand new 5th-generation fighters were already on standby. According to the exercise plan, the 4th-generation fighters are to take off first. Then, the 5th-generation fighters will execute a super short-distance carrier takeoff from the deck. Finally, they will engage and pursue the 4th-generation fighters. A moment later, several fighter jets shot past overhead with a deafening roar. Immediately after, a wave of heat washed over the deck, even though everyone had already moved to a safe position. But you could still feel the scorching hot exhaust from the 5th-generation fighter. Then, with a flash of blue light, the 5th-gen fighter shot up like a sharp sword, piercing straight into the clouds. Impressive. This 5th-gen's catapult launch is truly extraordinary. A short distance of only 10 meters. And it can accelerate to such a speed, it's something our 4th gen fighters just can't compare to. Even at full power, a 4th gen fighter needs more than 25 meters to take off. Doesn't this mean that as long as our production capacity is sufficient, a single destroyer could be equipped with multiple 5th gen fighters? Seeing the 5th gen's ultra-short carrier take off, the Air Force top brass were absolutely stunned. The shock of witnessing it live was overwhelming. At this moment, in the sky, the 2 5th gen fighters that took off later were already pursuing the 4th gen fighters. It has to be said, the speed of the 5th gen fighters far exceeds the 4th gens. And their radar search range is also far superior. The 4th gen fighter had nowhere to hide from the 2 5th gen jets. Target locked. Requesting permission to fire at will, said Lan Yu, one of the 5th gen pilots, over the comms. 01, copy. You are cleared to fire at will. Yes, sir. Lan Yu gave a hand signal to Huang Hai on the other side. The 2 5th gen fighters split left and right, each performing a 720-degree roll. Then they pulled up sharply, and after locking onto their targets, engaged their thrusters, diving down towards the 4th gen fighters below. As they each launched 2 simulated marker missiles, 4 4th gen fighters slowly descended, and after completing their attack, the 2 5th gen fighters also entered the attack range of several other 4th gen fighters. But as a beam of light scattered behind the 5th gen jets, it neutralized all of the 4th gen fighters' attacks. They then pulled up into a wide loop, getting behind the 4th gen fighters. This was followed by a wave of consecutive locks. 4 more 4th gen fighters descended. At this point, the group of top brass on the deck were praising non-stop as they watched the aerial battle. Truly worthy of being 5th gen fighters. They're on a completely different level. In just 2 minutes, they've already taken down 8 4th gen fighters. Their speed, attack power, and evasive capabilities are on a whole other level. It's incredible, and these 2 5th gen pilots already have such close coordination. What a spectacle. There's only one left now. Wait a minute, that's not right. Didn't we prepare 10 fighter jets? Why is one missing? Where's the 3rd gen fighter? Just as the top brass were immersed in the awe of the 5th gen fighters, they suddenly realized one plane was missing. Report. Pilot number 10 is unable to take off normally. The voice of pilot number 10 came over the comms, sounding completely dejected. What do you mean, unable to take off? Whoa Haibo, you can't even fly a 3rd gen fighter anymore? Joe Amen said, completely speechless. The pilots for both the red and blue teams this time were all handpicked by him. Every single one of these top pilots is a treasure to the Dragon Kingdom. In a sense, they are even more precious than the planes themselves. For this military exercise, to better experience the aircraft's performance, the tests were all conducted by the same group of pilots. This Guo Haibo is also one of the top pilots, but now he says he can't fly a 3rd gen fighter. The group of top brass was completely baffled. Guo Haibo said with a pained expression, well, about that, Commander, actually, I've been meaning to say this for the past 10 minutes. But I was too embarrassed to say. I've been flipping through the manual, and I still can't even find the power switch. I'm completely at a loss. How can this be? Isn't that a Gen 3? Wait, are you flying the plane that was modified by the toy factory? Joe Amen suddenly remembered something. That's right, Commander, I don't know what the heck they modified, but this is definitely not a Gen 3 fighter. Guo Haibo said, his face full of grievance. A moment ago, the planes next to him all whooshed into the sky, but he couldn't even find the takeoff switch. Then, other planes were being defeated and whooshing back down to land. And he still hadn't found the takeoff switch. It was just so damn demoralizing. Patch the live feed over to me. I want to see what kind of stunt this Guo Haibo is pulling. Joe Amen said over the intercom, while leading the group into the destroyer's command room. When the feed appeared on the screen, everyone was stunned. On the screen, a brand new aircraft was parked on the tarmac. This is a Gen 3 fighter? You've got to be kidding me. This has to be a damn alien spaceship. It can't be. Shock from this aircraft was just too immense. Its futuristic design seemed to overflow from the screen. One of the top brass noticed something different. No matter how you looked at it, it didn't seem like any current aircraft. It looked more like something from the future. The material of this fuselage isn't right. How is there no reflection under the sunlight? You can see it so clearly. Another official spoke up to the group, it's not just the fuselage material. Look at the entire aircraft. There are no weapon ports or missile pylons. This doesn't seem to be a fighter jet at all. Everyone nodded in agreement. Joe Eamon's face darkened. He had only wanted them to do a simple modification. But as a result, they had really turned it into a toy. A toy that can't fly or fight. Is it just for show? Meanwhile, inside the plane, Guo Haibo already looked like he had lost the will to live, as a group of top officials pointed and gestured at the screen. He felt like a monkey in a cage, his face turning as red as a baboon's rear end. How humiliating. To think I've served in the Air Force. A veteran pilot for nearly 20 years, and I can't even fly a single plane. To hell with it, Guo Haibo decided to just throw caution to the wind. He tossed the manual, which was thicker than a brick, to the side and just started mashing the buttons on the screen. The next second, a massive thrust suddenly erupted from below. A blue light shot out from under the plane, and the entire aircraft visibly began to levitate. The incandescent heat wave actually made the video feed look distorted. Seeing this, Joe Eamon quickly shouted into his radio. What's happening? Guo Haibo, what did you do? I don't know. I have a bad fee. Along with Guo Haibo's whale, the Gen 3 that had been hovering in midair instantly vanished without a trace. The group of officials were all completely dumbfounded. Guo Haibo, come in, please respond. Joe Eamon yelled into the radio. But there was no response from the radio. At that moment, the radar on the screen also lost the aircraft's signal. Are my eyes playing tricks on me? That was a vertical takeoff just now, right? One of the officials asked in disbelief. I was wearing sunglasses, and I saw it crystal clear. It was definitely a vertical takeoff. And then with a single horizontal thrust, it was just gone. Just this takeoff speed alone is at least Mach 1. My gosh, and that's just its takeoff speed. It accelerates from 0 to Mach 1 almost instantly. Just then, the urgent voice of a communications officer came over the intercom. Report, an unidentified flying object has been detected in our military exercise waters. There's also a nuclear-powered aircraft carrier, and it's moving extremely fast. Judging by its direction, it appears to be coming from Sakura country. Hearing this, Joe Eamon was stunned. This could mean the Sakura people are here to stir up trouble. They know full well we're conducting military exercises here, yet they deliberately sent a nuclear carrier group. And that unidentified aircraft is very likely the one they just bought from pretty country. What's the situation in the air right now? Report, all 9 4th-generation jets have been defeated and have returned. Our 5th-generation jets are currently on patrol, awaiting orders for short-field carrier landings. Tell them to halt the exercise immediately. An unidentified aircraft is approaching our exercise zone. Have them go and check out the situation. These are the waters of Dragon Country. Warn them to leave immediately. If necessary, you are authorized to use force to expel them. Yes, sir. The commander nodded. This time, they were well prepared. Because they already knew that Sakura country might try to pull something. After all, before a master wants to do something, they'll usually send their dog out to bark a couple of times first. So this time, in addition to the standard drill weaponry, the 5th-generation jets were also equipped with live ammunition, precisely to handle this kind of unforeseen incident. Having received their orders, Lan Yu and Huang Hai immediately headed toward the direction shown on the radar, searching in the direction of Sakura country. Before long, a fighter jet appeared in their sights. When he saw this fighter jet, Lan Yu couldn't help but be shocked. Although it had a small sun emblem on its fuselage, the overall design of the aircraft didn't resemble a Sakura country model. Instead, it looked like a jet from pretty country. But it was a model they had never seen before. Report, 01, this is Lan Yu. The bogey appears to be a new generation fighter from pretty country. As soon as Lan Yu finished speaking, the fighter jet in their sights was suddenly enveloped in a sonic cone. In the blink of an eye, it flew right between their 2 5th-generation jets. What, right? At least Mach 3, we're going after it, Lan Yu said over the intercom as he and Huang Hai steered their 5th-generation jets toward the Sakura country's latest fighter. But as Lan Yu's words traveled through the intercom and reached the command room, a group of high-ranking officials were left speechless with shock. They were familiar with all of pretty country's current fighters, but Lan Yu said he didn't recognize the aircraft in front of him. That can only mean it's pretty country's newest generation fighter, and they actually sold it to their attack dog. The purpose, naturally, is to target Dragon Country's current military exercise. And judging from Lan Yu's report, The performance of Pretty Country's new jet is likely superior to Dragon Country's 5th-generation fighters. Joe Amen said to the others, "It seems the rumors were true. Pretty Country really did succeed in developing a new generation fighter. And the fact that they sold it to Sakura Country means the technology must be quite mature. If its speed can reach Mach 3, could even evade conventional anti-aircraft missiles." At that moment, up in the sky, Dragon Country's 2 5th-generation jets were in hot pursuit of that new generation fighter from Sakura Country. But no matter how hard Lan Yu and his wingmen accelerated, they couldn't close the distance on the Sakura Country jet. And in the middle of all this, the Sakura Country jet kept making all sorts of provocative maneuvers. Lan Yu said angrily into the radio, "Report to O1. Our conventional speed can't keep up. We need to activate extreme speed mode. We have to stop this plane. It has already entered the airspace of our Dragon Country." Extreme speed mode is one of the features of the Dragon Country's 5th-generation fighters. In short, it burns through fuel to achieve a boost in speed, but the drawback is also huge. It drastically shortens the engine's lifespan and flight range. Joe Amen knew this as well. This was a desperate situation. If they couldn't even catch the plane in front of them, let alone talk about other capabilities. Speed is the most fundamental performance aspect of an aircraft, and the most important one, Joe Amen said in a grave tone. Lan Yu, this is O1. You are cleared to engage extreme speed mode. We will coordinate with coastal airfields in the Dragon Country. For your emergency landing, give it everything you've got. He knew that this test flight of their new 5th-generation fighter was originally intended as a show of force. But he never expected that Sakura Country, under their master's orders, would attempt to use their newest fighter to destroy the Dragon Country's show of force. This was a matter of honor for the Dragon Country's military. Going all out was something they had to do. Joe Amen secretly prayed, hoping that once their jets activated extreme speed mode, the Sakura Country jet would know its place and retreat. That way, the meaning of their show of force would still exist. Upon receiving the order, Lan Yu and Huang Hai immediately activated extreme speed mode and chased after the Sakura Country jet in front of them. In extreme speed mode, the 2 5th-generation fighters quickly caught up to the Sakura Country jet. But to their surprise, the Sakura Country pilot actually gave them the middle finger from inside the cockpit. Then he accelerated again, shaking off the 5th-generation fighters even in their extreme speed mode. He flew towards the Dragon Country's airspace. Seeing this, Lan Yu quickly fired a missile while the Sakura Country plane was still within lock-on range. After all, the Sakura Country's plane was forcefully entering Dragon Country airspace despite the warnings. They were already cleared for self-defense. As the missile chased after the enemy plane, the Sakura Country jet actually managed to accelerate again. It climbed sharply towards a higher altitude, with the 2 5th-generation fighters in hot pursuit. But after climbing to 20,000 meters, they reached their limit, watching helplessly as the Sakura Country jet continued to climb. It flew right through the clouds and disappeared from their field of vision. And on the radar, it showed that because the missile never caught up, its engine ran out of fuel and it plummeted into the sea. Lan Yu and Huang Hai were dumbfounded. They never expected the Pretty Country's new fighter to be so fast. That it could actually outrun an air-to-air missile. At this rate, it was virtually invincible. At this moment, the command center was also deathly silent. The sight of the missile falling into the sea had completely shattered the last shred of hope in everyone's hearts. A battle had already begun, and their missile couldn't even catch the enemy plane. This turned their 5th-generation fighters into a complete joke. Their Dragon Country had gathered all of its top technology, yet it was still completely crushed by the Pretty Country's fighter jet. This feeling of helpless defeat weighed on everyone's hearts like giant boulders. Joe Amen sighed powerlessly. "Tell them to come back. We will condemn them through diplomatic channels. The weak have no say in diplomacy. If we had a more advanced aircraft, we could have just shot it down and dealt with the consequences. But this is supposed to be our most advanced aircraft, and yet it couldn't do a single thing. What's more, Sakura Country even has a nuclear-powered aircraft carrier group on standby offshore. If a major conflict breaks out, I believe their nuclear-powered aircraft carrier group will head straight for us. But the Dragon Country's carriers are all for show, they're not combat-ready at all." At this moment, the faces of all the military officials were flushed beet red. They had never felt so humiliated. Just as the atmosphere in the command room froze to a breaking point, Guo Haibo's voice suddenly came over the radio. "Well, I'll be damned. 01, I finally got through. Everyone was stunned. It was Guo Haibo. How could they have forgotten about him? Joe Amen reacted quickly. He grabbed the radio as if it were a lifeline. Guo Haibo, this is 01, what's your situation? Joe Amen said to Guo Haibo. Reporting to 01, can hardly believe it myself, but I just took a little trip to outer space. It was so damn exciting. I finally found it in the instruction booklet. I found the operations manual section. I have some basic operational control now. I lost all signals when I was in outer space. I just barely managed to get back on our channel. As soon as Guo Haibo finished speaking, the command room fell into dead silence once again. The group of military leaders stood there, thunderstruck. You went to space and you actually came back? You were only out of contact for 10 minutes. You did a round trip to outer space and you're completely fine? And you even had time to flip through the operations manual? At this rate, your plane is as fast as a rocket. What the hell is this, a plane or a spaceship? Guo Haibo's description was completely beyond their comprehension. He wasn't even an astronaut. Even if an astronaut made such a trip, they would never be as casual about it as Guo Haibo was. Completely fine. Guo Haibo continued to speak earnestly into the radio. Sir, I'm really not lying. If you don't believe me, I can land on the destroyer right now. Land on the destroyer? Where exactly are you now? Joe Amen quickly went over to the radar screen to look, but he only saw that flashy new fighter jet from the Ameri country. It was buzzing around like a fly, and there was no trace of any other aircraft. I'm just hovering above the destroyer, Guo Haibo said, sounding a little excited. Hearing this, everyone was startled and quickly ran outside to look at the sky. But after looking all around, they couldn't find any aircraft. My apologies, sirs, I wasn't paying attention. I've been in stealth mode. As Guo Haibo finished speaking, the aircraft in the sky revealed itself. This is stealth? Seeing this, everyone's eyes nearly popped out of their sockets. They were certain there had been absolutely no aircraft in the vicinity just a moment ago. Yet one had suddenly appeared out of nowhere. This damn plane could turn invisible? It was one thing for radar not to detect it, but it was invisible to the naked eye, too. Joe Amen quickly grabbed the radio and said, Wait, Guo Haibo, don't land just yet. He had seen that toy rocket that flew into space with his own eyes. He never expected that giving this plane to that toy factory for modification would actually result in something so incredible. In that case, we might just be able to send that new Ameri country fighter home with its tail between its legs. Joe Amen has placed all his hopes on this plane you've modified. Joe Amen said to Guo Haibo, listen to me. A fighter jet from Cherry Blossom Country has appeared within our military exercise area. It could very well be Beautiful Country's latest fighter. 2 of our newest 5th-generation jets have already been defeated. The rest is in your hands. This is a battle for the honor of Dragon Country. Understood. Rest assured, sir. I guarantee I'll complete the mission. Hearing Guo Haibo's words, the group of top brass finally breathed a sigh of relief. To them, at this moment, they'd rather all the nonsense Guo Haibo said before was true than let that fighter jet fly around so arrogantly. Hearing this, Guo Haibo didn't hesitate. He immediately pressed the ignition button. The next second, with a deafening roar, the plane vanished once again. 2 seconds after the plane vanished, 2 curtains of water erupted from the sea's surface, leaving everyone dumbfounded. Was that plane just hovering in midair? Is that a fighter jet or a helicopter? After the jet had flown off, it was only then that Joe Amen realized. All that time, the plane Guo Haibo was flying had been completely still in the air, and without the immense thrust of vertical jets. It was just floating there so lightly. It was already completely impossible to use normal logic to understand this plane. That guy, Chen Xiao, really knows his stuff. We'll see about all that when this is over. For now, I need a real-time feed of the entire naval area. Also, keep a close watch on the movements of the nuclear carrier group. They've now reached the edge of Dragon Country's territorial waters. Put the live feed up on the screen. Preserve it as evidence. As Joe Amen spoke, he led everyone back into the control room. Meanwhile, up in the sky, the pilot from Cherry Blossom Country was feeling smug, flying his plane around in circles. Before, they had to pay exorbitant prices and get on their knees and beg, and still couldn't buy a plane like this. But this time, for some reason, Beautiful Country actually agreed to sell them one. You have to admit, Beautiful Country's technology really is the best in the world, compared to what Cherry Blossom Country developed on their own. This plane is on a completely different level, and this time, compared to Dragon Country's latest 5th-gen fighter. It leaves them in the dust. I mean, its speed alone gives it an absolute advantage. I hear their top brass is on site observing this time. I think I spotted a destroyer earlier. I'm gonna go buzz them for a bit. Besides, I've got plenty of fuel. Just a bunch of sick men of East Asia from puny Dragon Country. How can they possibly compare to our great masters from beautiful country? The pilot from Cherry Blossom Country muttered to himself. Just as he was about to turn back, he suddenly noticed. A dark shadow had appeared above him. The pilot from Cherry Blossom Country was curious. He looked up, and what he saw sent a shiver down his spine. Right then, directly above his own plane, another aircraft had appeared out of nowhere. And it bore the flag of Dragon Country. But his own plane's radar hadn't given any warning at all. When did this plane show up? And how did it appear so silently right beside my plane? An illusion. It must be an illusion. The pilot from Cherry Blossom Country was about to lose his mind. He slapped himself hard across the face. But the plane overhead was undeniably real. And the pilot in its cockpit was actually sitting there, reading a book. Son of a bitch, this is too damn insulting. The pilot from Cherry Blossom Country was furious. He immediately sped up, wanting to shake the plane off his tail, but discovered that no matter how he flew, even when he had pushed his speed to the limit, that plane somehow still kept pace with him, seemingly motionless. Cold sweat dripped down the Japanese pilot's face. The way the other jet was flying proved they had more than enough speed to spare. They were just toying with him. Good, let's play with him just like that. Let that little Sakura punk try and race us. We'll drive him nuts. In the command room, Joe Amon and his team watched the situation between the two jets, clapping their hands and laughing with delight, while everyone else erupted in cheers. Just moments ago, that Japanese plane had been taunting them in the very same way. Now, the tables had completely turned. It was an incredibly satisfying sight for everyone watching. There's nothing more satisfying than seeing instant karma. The Japanese pilot saw that. No matter what he did, he couldn't shake the Dragon Country's jet. So, he decided to risk it all, and headed toward his own nuclear-powered carrier group. He was trying to lure the Dragon Country's jet there. That way, their nuclear-powered carrier group would have a justification to attack the Dragon Country's jet. No matter how advanced that jet was, it was still only one plane, facing the overwhelming firepower of a nuclear-powered carrier group. No aircraft could possibly escape. This is bad. They seem to be heading toward the nuclear carrier group. Joe Amon realized the Japanese pilot's intention. He yelled urgently into the radio, "Whoa Haibo, break off pursuit immediately. Don't fall for their trick. If you get shot down, we'll have lost for nothing." Whoa Haibo said to Joe Amon, requesting permission. "Rest assured, Commander, I couldn't find the attack and defense buttons earlier, but I've found them now. This fighter's potential is nowhere near its limit. I request permission to continue the pursuit. That jet has already crossed our nation's airspace defense line. The territory and airspace of our Dragon Country are sacred and inviolable." For a moment, Joe Amon was at a loss. On one hand, he truly hoped that this modified jet could really perform a miracle. On the other hand, he was also worried that if he really failed, not only would they lose such an advanced fighter jet, but the honor of the Dragon Country would be tarnished once again. "Commander, I think we should let him try. If a toy rocket can make it to orbit, and shoot down a satellite from the pretty country, then I believe this jet that Chen Xiao modified can also work a miracle," Su Mingcheng said, stepping forward. He was Su Ruizu's father, and he had been there when the rocket was launched. Joe Amon nodded, took a deep breath, and picked up the radio. "Whoa Haibo, listen up. From this moment on, you are authorized to defend and attack at your own discretion. Show them our might in this battle. The territory of the Dragon Country is sacred and inviolable." Whoa Haibo replied solemnly, "Roger that. I guarantee I will complete the mission." At that moment, the two jets were flying at incredible speed, heading toward the nuclear carrier group on the open sea. Meanwhile, the carrier and its escorts had already been briefed on their pilot's plan. The nuclear carrier group began encroaching on the Dragon Country's territorial waters. The anti-aircraft weapons on every vessel were on full alert. Countless planes, like a swarm of flies, took off from the Japanese carrier, preparing to intercept the Dragon Country's jet. For Japan, even though they had bought this jet from the pretty country, the price they paid was considerable. First and foremost, they had to formally acknowledge the pretty country's daddy status. Outside of live broadcast diplomatic events, whenever the Japanese Prime Minister met with the president of the pretty country, they have to get on their knees and kowtow, not to mention the tens of billions of bald eagle dollars in debt. Besides, they only have the right to use this plane. Whenever America says they want it back, they have to scurry and send it right back. So absolutely nothing can go wrong with this plane. At this moment, on the display in front of Guo Haibo, countless red dots had already appeared. It was the carrier's aircraft group flying towards him, while a corner of the screen flashed with countless warning alerts. He had been locked onto by over 100 missiles. Guo Haibo swallowed hard. To be honest, he was panicking big time. Even though this plane far exceeded his imagination, he was currently facing a complete nuclear-powered carrier group. On the plane's screen, the full formation of the carrier group was displayed in dense detail. Added to that was a state-of-the-art fighter jet whose performance far surpassed the Dragon Country's 5th-generation fighters. The sight made Guo Haibo's scalp tingle. He had to admit, the combat capability of a nuclear carrier group was just too powerful. With such numbers, forget dealing with a single plane, even taking on a small or medium-sized country wouldn't be too difficult. Moreover, their vanguard fleet had already entered the Dragon Country's waters. The carrier-based jets were charging straight for Guo Haibo. Just as he was trembling and preparing for battle, he also entered the nuclear carrier group's targeting range. Suddenly, a cold, electronic voice sounded in Guo Haibo's ear. Magnetic storm screen activated. Immediately after, a spherical electromagnetic screen of light, with the plane at its center, shot out in all directions. Wherever this screen of light swept past, all electronic components died. All the planes in the sky, with the exception of Guo Haibo's fighter jet, all started dropping like flies, falling into the sea. At the same time, all the instruments on the entire nuclear carrier group malfunctioned and shut down. Even the nuclear-powered engines flamed out, and the ships gradually came to a halt on the sea's surface. The people of Sakura Country were completely stunned. At that moment, on the Sakura Country's nuclear carrier, the Yamato, the entire command room was pitch black. Sakura Country's admiral, Kwasha Wuling, stared at the dark screen and almost wet himself. He started hopping around the command room on his short legs, barking like a dog. What's going on? Where's the power? Where's the signal? Baka, what is happening? A soldier said from the side. The power is out. It seems our entire electrical system is paralyzed. The cause is unknown. I damn well know the power's out. I'm not blind. Unknown my ass. Hurry up and find out. Kwasha Wuling yelled furiously. Report. Propulsion system is down. Reports kept flooding in. Kwasha Wuling was about to go insane. Just then, a loud explosion was heard from the carrier's flight deck outside. Oh my god, everyone, look outside. A Sakura Country soldier pointed outside in disbelief. Everyone followed his finger and looked. They were frozen on the spot. The scene outside was like the end of the world. The planes that were in the sky were now spiraling around like flies. And that was only because the pilots were highly skilled, managing to glide the powerless planes through the air. On the deck, 3 jets that had attempted a forced landing had crashed into one another. Towering flames and flying debris left the entire flight deck in chaos. As for the fleet's escort helicopters and the like, they had crashed long ago. The moment they lost power, they just fell into the sea like dumplings, while the remaining planes were just barely gliding, drifting in the air, all trying to find the right moment to land on the carrier's deck. But they had no power now, so they couldn't be controlled. They could only barely steer, watching the planes wobble unsteadily, as they dove towards the deck, one after another, like a suicide attack. Baka, if this keeps up, they're going to sink our Yamato. Kwasha Wuling screamed in frustration. He was terrified. Just moments ago, 3 of those planes had tried to force a landing and crashed right into each other. It already blew a huge hole in the deck. If that happens a few more times, then our Yamato might end up being sunk by our own aircraft. Quick, everyone, get the manual weapons ready and open fire. Drive them away from our ship. Don't let them keep trying to land. Kwasha Wuling was in a complete panic now. The radios were already down. There was no way to warn them. If they were really sunk by their own planes, it would be a complete disgrace for the Sakura nation. But for the pilots up in the sky, they were in a total panic. They saw that a forced landing was impossible, so many of them started to bail out. But just as the pilots ejected, they were met with a sky full of artillery fire and bullets. Guo Haibo's earlier attack had only targeted the electronic systems. All the electronically guided weapons systems were paralyzed, but the ship's manual anti-aircraft guns and firearms were unaffected. The crew on the ships below were fighting for their lives, so they fired at the planes in the sky as if their bullets and shells were free. The planes had no power, so they couldn't take any evasive action. In an instant, the sky filled with exploding planes, like a fireworks display. Countless planes were blown to smithereens in midair. The Sakura pilots who saw things were going south and had already bailed out weren't targeted by bullets, but they were hit by the shockwaves and shrapnel from the explosions. Their parachutes were shredded like paper, and they screamed as they plunged into the sea. These carrier-based planes were prepared for war, after all, so they all had full tanks of fuel. They hadn't been in the air for long and were still loaded with live ammunition. When one of them exploded in the air, the resulting chain reaction was incredibly powerful. Plus, after the missiles exploded, they sent shrapnel flying everywhere, right into the other planes wobbling all around them. It was like they were competing to explode, blooming one after another in the sky. Kwasha Wuling just stared, dumbfounded, at the fireworks display. His mind went completely blank. In just 5 minutes, there wasn't a single plane left in the sky, and as the debris rained down, it didn't all land in the sea. A lot of it came down right on the carrier group. The destroyers and cruisers started exploding, too, and the 2 submarines that were originally submerged had to surface because their electrical systems failed, and they were destroyed by the falling debris. Kwasha Wuling dropped to his knees on the deck. It's over. The Yamato Invincible Squadron is completely finished. Kwasha Wulang's eyes rolled back in his head, and he fainted. Meanwhile, in the air, Guo Haibo hovered, witnessing the entire thing. All enemy aircraft are confirmed to have crashed into the sea. Furthermore, all of the ships in the nuclear carrier group have been hit by the explosions. Thick smoke is billowing from the nuclear carrier Yamato. Half of its flight deck has collapsed. It's doubtful it will ever see service again. The 2 submarines got the worst of it. They've completely sunk after the explosions. With a deafening boom, another explosion erupted on one of the cruisers. The fire on deck must have reached the ammunition magazine, causing it to explode from within. The cruiser was blasted into 2 pieces and slowly sank. And that badass, new model American fighter jet, during its glide just now, collided with another American plane, turning into a pile of scrap. Meanwhile, on the Dragon country's destroyer, all the top military brass were also completely dumbfounded, watching the spectacular fireworks show in the distance. Even after the show ended, their mouths were still hanging open. Joe Amen was the first to snap out of it. He swallowed hard and asked everyone, "The planes? They were all destroyed just now, right?" Beside him, Su Mingcheng also stammered. "How is this possible? That was dozens of carrier planes. How could they all suddenly malfunction and plummet into the sea?" All they had seen was a flash of light, and then they watched as the Sakura country planes started falling like rain. Could Guo Haibo have done all this? Joe Amen suddenly had a thought. No way. That's an entire nuclear-powered carrier group. Another senior officer beside him slapped himself hard across the face. How is this possible? A single person took out an entire nuclear-powered carrier group? A nuclear-powered carrier group is currently humanity's most powerful military strike force. There is no one of the flexibility of a complete fleet, its coordination, its firepower, is far beyond what any single weapon can compare to. As for our Dragon country, we only have 2 retrofitted carriers. Based on our current naval strength and carrier plane configuration, we can't even form a nuclear-powered carrier group. The reason Sakura country was able to run rampant during the World War and act so tyrannically in the Pacific was largely because this carrier group existed. But now, it was destroyed by a single aircraft? The group of military leaders looked as if they had seen a ghost. Just then, Guo Haibo's voice came over the radio. 0101, this is Guo Haibo. I have completed the mission, requesting permission to return. Everyone jolted upon hearing this. Joe Amen, trembling, picked up the radio. Guo Haibo, land on our destroyer immediately. Guo Haibo acknowledged and began his return. After putting down the radio, Joe Amen froze for a moment, looking at the flaming Sakura country carrier group in the distance. He suddenly squatted down, buried his head in his hands, and began to sob. For so many years, as the commander-in-chief of Dragon Country's Air Force, he watched as the Americans, the White Bear Country, and Sakura Country's aircraft and military technology remained light years ahead. His heart was filled with bitter humiliation. This time, they were even publicly shamed by Sakura Country, using the Americans' advanced aircraft, and Sakura Country had brought their nuclear-powered carrier group right up to their coast, clearly backing up their planes. It weighed on Joe Eamon's heart like a stone, but who could have imagined that the plane that took out Sakura Country's entire carrier group was actually their own Dragon Country's technology? The moment he heard that firm tone in Guo Haibo's voice, Joe Eamon couldn't hold back any longer. All the pressure, all the humiliation, was completely released in that instant. Everyone else felt the same. One by one, they also covered their faces and wept, with old tears streaming down. This victory wasn't just a victory in a military exercise. It wasn't just a victory in defending their territory. It meant that from this day forward, the Air Force and Navy of their Dragon Country had finally stood up tall. Everything that happened today turned all their past humiliations into nothing. Fame in a single battle, their pride finally restored. When Guo Haibo stepped down from the fighter jet, was also frozen in place. On the deck, a dozen or so military chiefs from the Dragon Country were holding onto each other, weeping in each other's arms. Guo Haibo's heart lurched. It's over, it's over. Did my impulsive action just cause trouble for the Dragon Country? I swear to God, I had no idea the plane's defense system was this powerful. And that was just from activating one of the defense systems, without even using the attack mode. It destroyed an entire nuclear-powered aircraft carrier group. At that moment, Guo Haibo was terrified in hindsight. After all, this was no small matter. Although the entire nuclear-powered carrier group had already entered the Dragon Country's territorial waters, and those planes had entered its airspace. This strike against the Sakura Country was an absolute catastrophe. It's very likely that the Sakura Country, and even the pretty country behind them, will use this as an excuse to attack the Dragon Country. It seems I was too impulsive after all, Guo Haibo thought dejectedly. He would bear the consequences alone, even if it meant being sent to a military tribunal. He would insist that this was his own unauthorized decision. Having made up his mind, he walked up to the group. Chiefs, I was wrong. I am willing to bear all responsibility. Arrest me. Guo Haibo held out his hands. Seeing Guo Haibo's reaction, everyone was stunned. Arrest you? For what? You did a fantastic job, kid. I'm going to award you a first-class merit for this. When Joe Eamon saw Guo Haibo approach, he wiped away a tear with his calloused hand. He stepped forward and gave Guo Haibo a big hug, as the group of military bigwigs gathered around. Guo Haibo was completely baffled. What did this mean? Why was he being commended? Could it be that he had done the right thing this time? Guo Haibo instantly snapped back to reality. Reporting, Commander, I have successfully completed the mission. The main credit goes to this modified aircraft behind me. The plane did all the heavy lifting. I didn't really do anything. Guo Haibo gave a military salute, then scratched his head in embarrassment. After a few pleasantries, the group finally noticed the fighter jet behind Guo Haibo. The eyes of a dozen or so military leaders lit up as they crowded around the fighter jet, unable to keep their hands off it. What is this material? It can actually achieve optical stealth. Look at this recessed jet nozzle. Even the paint around it hasn't changed at all. Doesn't that mean the heat resistance of this exterior paint has reached a terrifying level? Oh my goodness, look at these lines. The design philosophy is completely different from ours, yet it can achieve such incredible flight speeds. What does it use for propulsion? And where is the control stick in the cockpit? And what's with these buttons? It even has a panoramic canopy. Wait, where is the propulsion module? The group of leaders was full of praise, and finally, they all turned their gazes in unison. Onto Guo Haibo. He quickly grabbed the manual in his hands, an instruction manual thicker than a brick, and scurried over. While flipping through the manual, he began explaining to the dozen or so old men who were wearing reading glasses. At that moment, in the Su family home in Tianhai City. Grandpa, are you okay? Don't scare me. Su Ruozu's panicked cry came from inside the Su family's villa. Just a moment ago, Su Ruoshui had been with old Master Su in the first-floor living room, watching the live broadcast of the military exercise. From the very beginning, the atmosphere had been tense. The two of them hadn't said a word, accompanied only by the sound of old Master Su sighing from time to time. Dragon Country's newest fighter jets were completely suppressed by the Eagle Republic, which was hard for them to watch. But in just a moment, there was a huge turnaround, making Su Ruoshui jump to her feet with a cry of surprise. Her joy was indescribable. All the frustration she'd felt before was now replaced by pure elation. But when Su Ruoshui sat back down, she noticed that Old Master Su was completely still. She turned to look. She saw Old Master Su clutching his chest, collapsed on the sofa. A moment ago, seeing the Dragon Country jets take out Sakura Country's nuclear-powered carrier group, Old Master Su had gotten so excited that he had a heart attack. Su Ruoshui was instantly terrified. Although she knew her grandpa's heart condition was acting up, she was still at a complete loss, with no idea what to do. She fumbled around frantically, searching for his medicine, but the more she panicked, the more flustered she became. And the more flustered she was, the less she knew what to do. Her parents weren't home at the time. It was just Su Ruoshui in the house. Seeing her grandfather's breathing become weaker and weaker, Su Ruoshui started to cry out of desperation. Just then, the doorbell suddenly rang. Su Ruoshui felt as if she were grabbing onto a lifeline. She rushed to open the door, only to find you standing outside. Before she could even get a word out, tears started streaming down her face. Seeing this, you were completely baffled. You had originally come over because the planes had been successfully delivered. Planning to ask about the payment, you never expected the door to open to such a shocking scene. "Grandpa, my grandpa, Su Ruoshui stammered incoherently. Seeing the situation, you rushed right in. "He's having a heart attack." You quickly began to search Old Master Su's clothes, patting down his pockets. Under normal circumstances, heart patients will always carry their quick-acting heart pills with them. And sure enough, you found them in Old Master Su's jacket pocket. You quickly helped Old Master Su take the medicine. Then, you helped lay Old Master Su down flat and unbuttoned his collar. You turned your head and asked, "Have you called for an ambulance?" Su Ruoshui shook her head repeatedly. "Okay, don't panic. Go and open the doors and windows. I'll make the call," you instructed Su Ruoshui in a very calm manner. Su Ruoshui quickly did as you said. "It's all right. I've already followed the doctor's instructions for first aid. They'll be here soon. Don't you worry." Su Ruoshui watched as Old Master Su's breathing gradually stabilized, and she let out a sigh of relief. Wiping her tears, Su Ruoshui said to you, "Thank you. If you hadn't suddenly shown up, I really don't know what I would have done. If something happened to Grandpa because I didn't help him in time, I would have regretted it for the rest of my life." A short while later, the ambulance pulled up to the door. You helped move him onto the vehicle, and then followed it towards the hospital. At the hospital, Old Master Su was rushed into the operating room for emergency treatment. Su Ruozu's mother also rushed over after getting the news. "Chen Xiao, thank you so much for this. If it weren't for you, this would have been really dangerous," Wang Maiwan said, then turned to scold Su Ruoshui. "Look at you, young lady. You're all grown up, but you still panic and get flustered. What would you have done today if he hadn't been here?" The tears that Su Ruoshui had just managed to hold back began to fall once more. Just then, the door to the operating room was pushed open. A doctor walked out. "The patient is temporarily out of danger, but he'll need to stay for observation for a period of time. Can the family come and handle the relevant paperwork?" Hearing that Old Master Su was okay, everyone let out a collective sigh of relief. Just as you were about to say something, you suddenly heard the sound of hurried footsteps. Then, a dozen or so military officers walked over here. The man in the lead was none other than Su Ruozu's father, Su Mingchang. Su Mingchang was originally participating in a military exercise, but as soon as he heard that Old Master Su was in the ICU, he immediately took a helicopter to the hospital. With him were some military officers from his unit. After all, Old Master Su's status was too special. He was a crucial technological talent for the Dragon Country. Any accidental loss would be a huge blow. "Chen Xiao, why are you at the hospital?" The moment Su Mingchang saw you at the entrance, standing there with his own daughter, he suddenly had an ominous premonition. It was like seeing a pig sitting next to a prize cabbage. "Would you believe me if I said it was a coincidence? If there's nothing else, I'll be leaving now." Seeing the situation, you felt things weren't looking good. This diplomatic incident of destroying a nuclear-powered aircraft carrier group, it shouldn't have anything to do with me, right? It's not like I told them to destroy it, you thought, decisively preparing to run. "Halt," but then you heard Su Mingchang bark out a series of familiar commands. "Attention, about face." You turned around with a helpless expression. "Xiao Lu, escort him back to the Haha Toy Factory. Commander Zhou is waiting for him there," Su Mingchang said to the person behind him. Hearing this, your heart sank. "I'm screwed. It seems I really was being targeted." But there was no way out now. They had already blocked the entrance to my toy factory. Even if I ran, I could run, but I couldn't hide. Seeing no other choice, you could only follow the man into the car. The ride was silent. By the time you arrived at the toy factory's entrance, you were completely dumbfounded. The area around the toy factory was now filled with all kinds of military-plated vehicles, and there were many unfamiliar faces around. Although they were wearing plain clothes, you could tell at a glance that these people were all soldiers in disguise. And on top of your toy factory's security booth, there was even a sniper on standby. Holy moly, what's with such a massive presence? You muttered, walking out of the car in a daze. You saw a group of old men surrounding old Wong, the security guard, talking excitedly, spittle flying everywhere. They went from the bullying they had endured in the past to today's proud and glorious victory. Then, they moved on to their grand visions for the future. The group of big shots were all flushed with excitement. Their once stooped backs were now straight, and they spoke with newfound eloquence. They were brimming with confidence. The same ones who had been clamoring for retirement were now saying they wanted to borrow another 500 years from the heavens to watch the dragon country stand proud in the east. At this moment, old Wong, the security guard, was sweating profusely, wiping his brow with his sleeve from time to time. Seeing this, you couldn't help but gasp. The lowest-ranking person surrounding old Wong was a general. Such a huge scene. Did I just stumble into a den of generals? What are you all doing? Hearing your voice, the group of big shots immediately fell silent and turned in unison to look at you. They had heard that this aircraft was modified by the owner of a toy factory. They had imagined this owner must be some bigwig in the military-industrial complex, or perhaps even a scientist living in anonymity. But they never expected you to be so young. As everyone's eyes locked onto you, you felt your skin crawl under their gaze. You had to remember, the people before you were bona fide generals of the dragon country. It was no exaggeration to say. They had all clawed their way out of mountains of corpses and seas of blood. They naturally radiated an incredibly powerful aura. Being stared at by more than a dozen pairs of eyes, even Lu Ming, who was standing to the side, was trembling slightly. The leader, Zhou Aimon, asked you, "Are you really the one who built that new model of fighter jet?" You smiled and said, "That's right, I'm the one who built it. Otherwise, why would all you generals show up at my little toy factory at the same time?" Zhou Aimon said with great admiration, "Impressive, very impressive. A true prodigy. Do you mind if we take a look around?" Of course not. You then led the group towards the workshop. But when they arrived outside the factory, they were dumbfounded. Are you kidding me? Think such a high-tech aircraft was built in a rundown factory like this? That's right, it's not the environment that matters. It's the technology. Hearing you say that, many of the generals nodded in agreement. They recalled the days when they were developing the atomic bomb. The conditions back then were incredibly harsh, yet they still succeeded. But as research facilities have improved over the years, the breakthroughs have become fewer and farther between. Yet here you are, a civilian researcher, staying true to your passion under such difficult conditions. You must have poured every last cent into research and development, without any concern for your surroundings. You even have to run a toy factory just to make a profit and fund your research. This is the kind of dedication to research our dragon country needs. Upon entering the workshop, they could clearly see the various completed components and parts. The design schematics on the wall were especially noticeable. It was clearly the aircraft they had seen earlier. One of the older generals eagerly pulled out a small notebook and approached you. What material did you use for the aircraft's hull? How is it capable of turning invisible? And I don't just mean stealthy to radar, but completely invisible to the naked eye. You explained to the general, it's a type of biomimetic material. Its surface is actually a single, integrated layer that combines biotechnology with metallurgy. It allows the surface to adapt and change based on its immediate surroundings. Even when it can't actively camouflage itself, it can distort light waves by dissipating heat, which affects normal vision. This creates an illusion, something like a mirage. When you combine that with the jet's incredible speed, it becomes nearly impossible to track with the naked eye. You had just finished explaining, when another general leaned in and asked, "So, what's the principle behind these recessed jet nozzles? How can something so powerful be hidden inside the jet's frame, while maintaining such incredible dynamic stability? How did you manage that?" It's mainly based on the principle of three-point dynamics. But really, it's because the power source is strong enough. Another general picked up on that and asked, "So what's the deal with the power source?" I looked all over the fuselage. And I couldn't find a fuel intake anywhere. Is it a concealed refueling port? It doesn't actually run on fuel. Refueling, after all, makes us dependent on foreign powers. So, from the very beginning of the design, I incorporated a compact nuclear power system. Hidden inside the fuselage, a compact nuclear power system. It's also relatively safe. A compact nuclear power system? Hearing this, the crowd gasped. What? A compact nuclear power system that can be used directly in an aircraft? You can't be serious. And what about the design of its frame? What was your thinking there? And the revolutionary design of the cockpit. It doesn't even have a traditional control stick anymore. They pelted you with one question after another, all while diligently taking notes. Any single person here was powerful enough to have their way in any military district. But right now, they were like grade schoolers, a look of pure admiration in their eyes. They recorded your every word as if it were gospel, and you couldn't blame them. After all, when it came to the equipment inside, it wasn't just that they'd never seen it. There were so many things they had never even heard of. Just the instruction manual you left behind before had a lot of functions they couldn't understand. Now that they finally got to meet you, it was only natural that they wanted to ask you for advice. And you were happy to oblige anyone who asked. You answered every question in great detail. Before you knew it, it was already dark. But this group of old generals were still tirelessly gathered around you, asking one question after another. Finally, Zhou Aiming couldn't take it anymore and stepped in to mediate, saying, Chen Xiao, didn't you sign a strategic cooperation agreement with Elder Sus side? But that's, at most, an agreement with their research institute. So, how about this? I'm now representing the Longguo Air Force, and I'd also like to sign a strategic cooperation agreement with you. We're not asking for anything else. We just want to share the technology for this aircraft. And you don't need to worry about the payment. We guarantee a minimum of 2 billion a year. Sign the contract now, and we'll transfer the funds immediately, Zhou Aiming said with a smile. How much? 2 billion? Per year? You felt like you must have misheard him. Seeing the stunned look on your face, Zhou Aiming quickly explained, of course. We know this amount is a bit low, but the Longguo Air Force's budget is quite limited at the moment. The country is focusing heavily on economic development, so it's inevitable that other areas get less attention. For a fighter jet that can take on a nuclear-powered carrier group, this price is indeed a little low. After all, a fully formed nuclear-powered carrier group costs over $1 trillion. This mere 2 billion is truly a trivial amount in comparison. Sign it, I'll sign it right now. How can you put a price on patriotism? Whatever Commander Zhou says, goes. Hearing this, Zhou Aiming was so excited he could have danced. Quick, transfer the funds to Chen Xiao immediately. Then have someone prepare the contract. Just get the signature page ready first. The specific details can be filled in later. Zhou Aiming felt that coming to celebrate Elder Sus' birthday was the best decision he had ever made in his life. Not only did he witness a quantum leap in the field of aviation, but he had also single-handedly ushered in a new era for the Air Force. And he himself had acted decisively. He had secured the strategic cooperation agreement with the person standing right in front of him. With this technology sharing, even if it meant exhausting all of Longguo's resources, they had to continue developing this aircraft. They wouldn't even need that many. With just 10 planes like this, they could stand tall and confident in front of the pretty country from now on. And as for himself, the commander of the Air Force, he would probably go down in the history books of Longguo. Just then, your phone vibrated. You took it out and saw a notification. 2 billion yuan deposited from the Bank of Longguo. Looking at the long string of zeros that followed, you immediately broke into a wide grin. Your toy factory was finally going to make a comeback. As long as you upgraded the production equipment, then no matter what you produced or modified in the future, the efficiency would be off the charts. Oh, right, Commander Zhou. About how we destroyed the Sakura country's nuclear-powered carrier group this time. They're not going to make us pay for it, are they? You asked Zhou Aiming, recalling the afternoon's events. Pay? Pay for what? They entered our Longguo's territorial waters and airspace without permission. They should be grateful we didn't wipe them all out. And they expect us to pay? Do they really think Longguo's territorial waters are their personal backyard? Is it a place they can just come and go as they please? Zhou Aiming said coldly, now that Longguo has the technological support you've provided, even if Sakura country has the pretty country backing them up, what does it matter? If they learn to behave from now on, being a loyal guard dog for the Americans is one thing, but if you don't behave, we'll just wipe you out along with your masters. The scene shifts. Inside the Pentagon of the United States, the atmosphere was tense to the extreme. Mr. President, the weapon the Dragon Kingdom has displayed this time is completely beyond our comprehension, the Secretary of Defense said, looking at the large screen that showed the ruins of the Sakura Kingdom's aircraft carrier fleet, his voice trembling. Biden slammed his fist on the table. They said it was a toy. To hell with their toy. Immediately activate the highest level air raid alert. Notify all NATO member states. We are on the brink of the 6th World War. Get all combined fleets assembled for me. Roll out all of our strategic nuclear weapons in the Pacific. I want to let the Dragon Kingdom know just who calls the shots on this planet. Following Biden's order, the entire Western world was instantly shaken. Piercing air raid sirens blared through the night in the capitals of various countries as countless stealth fighters took to the skies. The mighty Western Combined Fleet approached the Dragon Kingdom's waters from all directions. Media outlets around the globe reported frantically. Everyone thought the end of the world had truly arrived. Meanwhile, inside the Dragon Kingdom's High Command Center, Joe Amon, Old Sue, and other high-ranking military officials were not on high alert as they usually would be in such a situation. Commander, we've detected 18 aircraft carrier battle groups from the states and their allies approaching our position. And all of them possess nuclear strike capabilities, the communications officer reported. Joe Amon scoffed, since they want to come here to die, then let's grant them their wish. Contact Chen Xiao immediately, see if he has any new toys for us. At this moment, inside the Haha Toy Factory, machines were roaring. You, having just received 2 billion, directly exchanged it in the system for the highest grade. Fully automated production line, the once dilapidated workshop was instantly transformed into a secret military fortress filled with a heavy industrial, high-tech style. Ah, these robotic arms work like a charm, you said, looking at the dozens of huge components being assembled before you. You clapped your hands in satisfaction. Just then, Joe Amon's call came through. He urgently explained the situation with the states. Combined fleet bearing down on them. Brother Chen, the situation is a bit tricky this time. The other side has mustered the entire assets of the Western world. Your flying rockets and stealth fighters are impressive, but there are too few of them. I'm afraid it'll be difficult to deal with so many targets at once. Hearing this, you glanced at the huge, newly completed model next to you and said nonchalantly, "Don't panic, Commander Joe. I just so happened to have finished a big water toy. I was just worried I had nowhere to test it. You guys just clear the sea defense line a bit. I'll bring it over right now." A few hours later, on the East Sea defense line, the combined fleet of the states blotted out the sun. The dense formation of warships advanced across the sea like a great wall of steel. Biden sat in the command room of the flagship, watching the Dragon Kingdom's completely static coastal defense on the screen. He laughed arrogantly. The people of the Dragon Kingdom must be scared out of their wits by us. Relay my orders. Prepare for the first round of deterrent bombardment. However, just as his words faded, the radar operator suddenly let out a scream as if he had seen a ghost. Mr. President, there's an unidentified super large object in the waters ahead. What is it, making such a fuss? Biden pushed the radar operator aside and looked out at the sea. The next second, the coffee in his hand clattered to the ground. On the once calm sea, the water suddenly and violently churned to both sides. Terrifying warship, 10 times larger than their biggest nuclear-powered aircraft carrier, was slowly rising from the depths of the sea. This warship was pitch black. Its surface shimmered with an eerie blue plasma light, and its bow was mounted with an enormous, suffocatingly large plasma railgun, and on the side of this behemoth, which resembled a star destroyer, were several incredibly conspicuous Chinese characters, produced by the Haha Toy Factory. Oh my god, what in the world is that monster? The American naval commander's legs gave out, and he collapsed right onto the deck. Meanwhile, you were standing in the panoramic command room of that star destroyer, holding a cup of goji berry tea as you pressed the broadcast button. Attention, Joint Fleet ahead. You have now entered the testing waters. For my newly developed remote-controlled toy boat, if you're not afraid of a toy scratching your paint, then by all means, keep moving forward. Staring at the cannon that was charging up, radiating an aura of destruction, Denbai, who had been so arrogant just moments before, was scared out of his wits. He screamed repeatedly, "Retreat! Retreat immediately! That's not a monster we can afford to provoke. Anyone who calls that a toy again, I'll shoot them myself." As you watched the Western fleet flee in disarray, earth-shattering cheers erupted from the Dragon Country's defense line, but you just sighed helplessly. Honestly, I was just making a simple toy boat. How did I scare them off again? As the Star Destroyer's suffocating presence swept across the entire sea, the Western Joint Fleet's retreat devolved into an unprecedented rout. In order to escape faster, several American guided missile cruisers actually caused a chain reaction collision in the chaos. President Denbai on the flagship scrambled and crawled into an anti-air helicopter, even leaving his most prized nuclear button briefcase behind on the command room sofa. In less than half an hour, the massive fleet that had just been aggressively trying to trigger the Sixth World War was reduced to nothing but a few floating boxes of compressed biscuits and lifebuoys on the sea. Meanwhile, in the Dragon Country's High Command Center, Joe Amon and a group of top military officials stared at the satellite feed, having even forgotten to breathe. Chen, Comrade Chen Xiao. Joe Amon's voice was trembling now. He looked at the young man on the holographic screen holding goji berry tea, as if he were looking at a god. You call this a large-scale water toy? This is a damn Star Destroyer that could part the moon's hair with one shot. You scratched your head, a little embarrassed. You flatter me, Commander Joe. It's mainly because the funding was sufficient, so I just expanded a bit on the previous remote-controlled boat blueprints. If you guys don't like the color, I can change the paint job. A pink Peppa Pig theme would work, too. The general nearly spat out a mouthful of old blood. Painting a world-ending Star Destroyer with a Peppa Pig theme. If the Americans saw that, they'd probably have a mental breakdown on the spot. When this news got out, the world was in an uproar. That day's international news headlines were all dominated by the Dragon Country's ultimate secret weapon, the Ha-Ha Toy Factory. Inside America's Hexagon building, the atmosphere was like a graveyard. Denbai, wrapped in a blanket, sat trembling at the Oval desk. Across from him, the Secretary of Defense and the Director of Intelligence all had their heads bowed. No one dared to say a word. Where are the spies? Where are our ace agents? President Denbai roared, slamming his fist on the table. I don't care what you have to do. Steal it, rob it, buy it. I want a toy from the laughing Ha-Ha Toy Factory. Allocate $100 billion in special funds, now. I want to buy their, what was it, that remote-controlled boat. The Director of Intelligence wiped away his cold sweat and spoke bitterly. Mr. President, we can't buy it. We tried placing an order through an offshore company, but their customer service replied and said that the large remote-controlled boat is a limited edition blind box item and requires winning a lottery. And it only accepts real name verification with a Dragon Country ID. Then send in agents to infiltrate. Go steal the blueprints. We've already sent them. We sent 50 of our best ghost agents, the Director of Intelligence said, on the verge of tears. But before they could even get close to the factory wall, the factory manager released a pack of watchdogs and they were all captured. Watchdogs? 50 of our top agents couldn't handle a few dogs? Reporting, Mr. President, those were mecha tyrannosaur figures. Our agents were chased for 3 blocks by those mecha tyrannosaurs that can spit high-energy electric arcs. Now they're all tied up at the factory entrance, being used as human-sized welcome signs. By now, the laughing Ha-Ha Toy Factory had become the most mysterious and heavily fortified restricted area in the world. But to maintain its facade as a toy factory, the cartoon smiley face sign still hung over the main gate. It's just that the guards at the gate were now the fully armed, most elite special forces of the Dragon Country. One afternoon, the campus belle Su Ruoshui brought Old Master Su to the factory. Old Master Su's heart condition had completely healed. He now walked with a vigorous stride, his face glowing with health. The moment he walked in, he excitedly grabbed your hand. You're a national treasure of our Dragon Country now. The higher-ups have decided to declare the 50-li radius around your toy factory a top-level special military zone, to be protected by our military region 24 hours a day. You sighed helplessly. Old Master, I've told you, I'm just a legitimate businessman who makes toys. If you do this, how am I supposed to sell my toys anymore? Su Ruoshui let out a chuckle, her beautiful eyes twinkling as she looked at you. Are those really just ordinary toys? What kind of toy can scare the pants off the United States' entire joint fleet? By the way, have you been busy with any new products lately? Your eyes lit up. You led them deep into the workshop. Before them stood a suit of silvery white armor, as tall as a person. Its lines were fluid, exuding an ultimate sense of science fiction. Miniature reactor on its chest emitted a blue glow. This is the deluxe edition of the transformation armor set I've been developing. You explained proudly, patting the armor's shell. Old Master Sus eye twitched. From past experience, he knew this thing was far from simple. He asked tentatively, what exactly are the functions of this armor? You replied casually, oh, no major functions. It just uses a bit of strong nuclear force material, making it immune to any physical attack short of a nuclear blast. It's also equipped with a personal supersonic flight engine and an antimatter particle beam. I figure if kids wear it to play in the mud, they won't get their clothes dirty. Old Master Su gasped, clutching his chest as he staggered back 2 steps. Immunity to nuclear blasts, personal faster than light travel, and an antimatter beam? And you call this something to keep kids from getting their clothes muddy? Chen Shao. Old Master Su took several deep breaths to compose himself. His eyes gleamed as he stared at the suit of personal armor. The quadrennial, the World Joint Military Competition was on. America had always been bragging about their invincible exoskeleton mechs. This toy of yours, could you lend it to our Dragon Nation's special forces to take for a spin? You nodded cheerfully. No problem, I'm already planning to mass produce 70 or 80 sets. When the time comes, I'll set you guys up with a mech escort team just for fun. Seeing your nonchalant expression, Old Master Su and Su Ruoshui exchanged a look. They knew that in next month's World Military Competition, America's pride and joy, their army mech unit, was probably going to get so brutally dominated by these transformation suits that they'd be psychologically scarred. The rules of this world were being completely rewritten by a young man who ran a toy factory. 1 month later, deep in the Sahara Desert, the quadrennial World Joint Military Competition officially kicked off. This time, America had truly spared no expense to wash away the shame of their joint fleet being scared witless by a toy boat. President Denbai directly approved the Zeus single trooper exoskeleton mech, which was still in its top secret testing phase, and had the entire competing team fully equipped with it. Not only that, they also paid a hefty sum to invite over 200 of the world's top media outlets for a full, global high-definition live broadcast. Ladies and gentlemen, approaching us now is the great American nation's Zeus mech squad. Each suit costs up to $1 billion, equipped with the most advanced micro-Vulcan cannons and depleted uranium armor. The American commentator in the broadcast booth roared at the top of his lungs, today, we will prove to the entire world that in the face of absolute ground warfare supremacy, any flashy, gimmicky weapons are completely useless. The military delegations from various countries sat in the viewing stands, watching those steel behemoths. The American mechs, whose every step could stomp a deep crater into the sand. They all gasped in awe. Just as everyone was buzzing with discussion, the Dragon Nation's competing team made their entrance. The entire venue fell deathly silent in an instant. A few seconds later, an uproar of mocking laughter filled the air. There they were, 10 tall and mighty Special Forces soldiers from the Dragon Nation, inexplicably wearing cheap, red plastic vests. Around their necks hung a long red sash fluttering in the wind, and in their hands, they held a shoddy red plastic hoop. What was even more ridiculous was that on their feet, they were actually wearing a pair of children's rollerblades with little wheels underneath that lit up with colorful lights whenever they moved. What on earth were they doing? Was this some kind of cosplay contest for the third Prince Neza from Fairy Tales? The American team leader, General Mac Artus, was laughing so hard he was crying. Has the Dragon Nation completely given up on resisting? Have they switched careers to put on a consolation show for a kindergarten? In the viewing stands, Old Master Su and Joe Aemon calmly sipped their tea, the corners of their mouths curling into a cold smirk, as if they were looking at dead men. Only they knew that these 10 seemingly ridiculous children's stage costumes were actually the Naza's Fury of the Sea's Supreme set, personally crafted by Chen Shao. That red sash was a flexible carbon nanotube capture band. The red plastic hoop was a plasma ring cutter, and those light-up rollerblades were actually miniature anti-gravity and personal superluminal flight pedals. The first event, a 100-kilometer, full-load, armed cross-country race, begins now. At the referee's command, the American Zeus mech squad immediately activated the engines on their backs. Treads and thrusters engaged simultaneously. Like 10 stampeding rhinos, they charged towards the finish line at an astonishing speed of 150 kilometers per hour. The swirling sand and their imposing presence were utterly terrifying. In contrast, the Dragon Nation squad, all 10 of them, stood alone at the starting line. Suddenly, the Dragon Nation's captain took a deep breath and gently tapped his light-up wind and fire wheel rollerblades. The bottoms of the rollerblades instantly lit up with a rainbow marquee effect and even started playing a very retro. A cheesy electronic tune played, "Our motherland is a garden. The flowers in the garden are so vibrant." Along with this childish background music, the miniature engines at the bottom of the roller skates let out an almost inaudible hum. Whoosh, there was no sonic boom, no shockwave. Not even a speck of dust was kicked up. The 10 Special Forces soldiers from the Dragon Country just like that vanished into thin air from the starting line. Where are they? Where is Team Dragon Country? MacArthur's shot to his feet, frantically fiddling with the radar monitor in front of him. Reporting, General." The referee at the finish line's voice trembled as it broadcasted over the radio to the entire venue. "The Dragon Country squad has already reached the finish line. Time elapsed 0.000001 seconds. It was as if a nuclear bomb had been dropped on the entire world. 100 kilometers in 0.000001 seconds. Isn't that freaking teleportation?" The high-speed camera replay along the race route, even when slowed down 10,000 times, could barely capture a blurry streak of rainbow-colored light. Meanwhile, still frantically running in the desert, was the beautiful country's team Zeus, eating sand. Suddenly, they heard through their headsets that the Dragon Country team had already won the championship, and they almost collectively face-planted into a sand dune. Cheating. This is definitely a cheating weapon on the level of a space warp. MacArthur's yelled, on the verge of a breakdown. But the competition had to continue. The second event, hardcore combat target destruction. Both sides must destroy a target 10 kilometers away. A doomsday-grade defensive bunker constructed from depleted uranium alloy and 3-meter thick reinforced concrete. The beautiful country's mecha squad regrouped. The miniature missile pods on their shoulders opened up completely. With a deafening roar, dozens of high-explosive, armor-piercing shells whistled out, instantly turning the bunker into a sea of fire. "Did you see that? This is the firepower of our beautiful country." The commentator regained his sense of pride. Now it was Team Dragon Country's turn. The captain was seen slowly raising his hand, holding that red plastic universe ring that looked like you could buy it for $5 at a night market stall. Reporting, "Sir, factory manager Chen said we just need to throw this universe ring. But we need to be gentle with the throw, right?" The captain asked naively through the communicator. "Do not use too much force. That thing is an antimatter cutting ring. If you throw it too hard, you could split the Sahara Desert in half." Joe Eamon's anxious roar came through the radio. The captain, as carefully as if he were playing a ring toss game, casually tossed the red plastic ring in his hand towards the 10-kilometer away fortress. The moment the plastic universe ring left his hand, it expanded massively in the air. The originally cheap-looking red plastic surface suddenly erupted. With a blinding, dark blue plasma death ray, the universe ring silently spun across the 10 kilometers towards that giant fortress complex. There was no explosion, no flash of fire. Only a faint, crisp slice was heard, like a hot knife cutting through butter. Under the gaze of billions of eyes around the world, that mountain of fortifications, hundreds of meters tall and able to withstand even a nuclear bomb, along with the Earth's crust beneath the fortress, was directly split in two. The upper half, under the corrosion of dark energy, instantly turned into a sky full of dust and vanished into thin air. In its place was left only a canyon-like sinkhole with the cut surface as smooth as a mirror. The entire venue fell deathly silent. You could hear a pin drop. The 10 pilots of the beautiful country's participating team looked at the Vulcan cannons in their hands, still smoking from just firing missiles, then looked at the distant canyon that seemed to have been erased from the face of the earth. With a thud, they all fell to their knees in the desert. The monster raised its hands and shouted its surrender. MacArthur's vision went black and he collapsed on the viewing platform. Meanwhile, across the ocean in the White House, Denbai watched the live broadcast, his hands trembling as he fumbled for his emergency heart medication. "Turn off the live feed. Cut the global signal immediately. Don't humiliate us any further." At the same time, inside Tianhai City's Haha Toy Factory, you were lying on a wicker chair, munching on watermelon while watching the live TV broadcast. Old Wang, the security guard, walked over wiping his sweat. "Director, dozens of military trucks have pulled up outside. They say Commander Joe is here to give you a silk banner and a bonus. And behind him are a few of those filthy rich guys from the Middle East. The royal representatives from those loaded nations,